Now, the deadline for the objections on published candidate lists has come and gone, and the Independent Electoral Commission will brief the media on the way forward tomorrow. Now, there are also still a lot of questions about the 3 ballot papers and how all of this is going to work. So remember, this is part of the show that is called Election Matters, where we will take your questions as well and also touch on some of the important subject matters to help you understand and also bring you up to speed with the voting process. So let's start that with Deputy Chief Electoral Officer at the IEC, Masego Sheburi. Thank you so much for your time once again. The deadline for the submissions of objections has passed. So I know there's a briefing tomorrow, but what can you tell us about what happens now?
Indeed, the candidate nomination process is evolving. Today was the cutoff time for persons who may have reason to believe that there are people who are not qualified to stand to be elected to legislative assemblies to raise those objections. The Commission will, from tonight, deliberate and make decisions on those objections. And tomorrow, as you indicated, the Commission will indicate to the South African public the decision that it has taken in respect of the various objections that have been raised.
I suppose it's a long night ahead then. Let's then, of course, look at, the other part of this process. What happens then if, for example, someone has not submitted their letter accepting their nomination?
Okay. We know that cutoff of candidate nomination closed on the 8th. Soon thereafter, we began a process of validating the submissions that had been made by the parties. Parties had opportunities to provide additional information where information may have been outstanding. That period has come and gone. A party that has failed to provide that additional information will have their candidate or candidates disqualified. The period that we are in now was to deal with people who may have been nominated by parties or who stood as independents but are not qualified in terms of the Constitution. So it is not an opportunity for parties to comply. It is an opportunity for interested persons, any person in the country, to raise objections against the suitability or otherwise of candidates on party lists or independent candidates.
The last time you and I spoke, we were talking about the 3 ballot system, and there were still some viewer questions that we had, in this particular regard from some who wanted to understand certain parts of the processes. So I'm going to take some of them now. I mean, one was asking what happens, for example, if someone goes to the polling station and they need assistance in terms of understanding what they're seeing in front of them. So who do they talk to?
Okay. One, we will have ballot orientation posters at the voting stations. That will help voters to have an orientation or where to find their candidate on the ballot paper. If they still need questions, they could ask any of our staff members who will be identified by their name and the colors and T-shirts of the Electoral Commission to assist them. However, we hope that given our ongoing voter education, given interactions like this one, it will not be necessary that persons find themselves at voting station still requiring information on the use of ballot papers.
And we talk about the ballot papers right now on our screens. We are showing the national, the regional and the provincial. So let's talk about, are they color coded? Are they going to be different from province to province?
There are 3 colors to the ballot paper: a different color for the national, a separate color for the regional, as well as a unique color for the provincial legislature ballots. There won't be different colors in respect of provinces. The provincial ballot will be the same across all the provinces. The only difference will be the candidates that appear thereon, because in a province you might find that there are parties that are contesting in one province but not in another. Similarly, there may be independent candidates on a ballot in Gauteng and different independent candidates in a ballot in the Eastern Cape. So the colors, while the colors are consistent, the contestants may be varied.
And while we keep the ballot paper on air, I'd like us to also talk about some of the common errors that people then make when they see the ballot papers and what should be avoided.
The purpose of a ballot paper is to enable a voter to identify a candidate or party of their choice among the competing contestants, to make a mark against the party or candidate of their choice in the provided block. So a person, we prefer that people make a X mark, but if a person makes any other mark, a tick, or they write in one block, because a ballot paper is for purposes of identifying candidates, we will accept that as a choice of a voter. However, voters are warned not to make markings that overlap the blocks. For example, if you make marks in two blocks, we will not be able to ascertain to which candidate to assign that vote. And in that instance, that ballot may end up being spoiled because we can't ascertain the choice of the voter. So voters are asked, please make a simple mark in one block so that we can record your mark, your vote has been cast, and translate that vote into representation into the various legislative assembly. We warn voters to avoid writing statements on the ballot because that will render the ballot spoiled, because we will not be able to determine whether that writing, that poem, is an affirmation or of a candidate or a statement that is not intended to support that candidate.
So what happens in a case where someone makes a mistake? Can they go and ask for another one, or what happens in that regard?
Indeed, if a person marks a ballot, at any point before they deposit that ballot into the ballot box, that person may return that marked ballot and ask to be issued with a new ballot. So they do not even have to aver that they made a mistake. A person could make a mark deliberately, but before they deposit that ballot paper into a box, they get attacked by consciousness. They can return that ballot. We will mark it as a ballot paper that was issued, but not deposited into the ballot box. We will reissue that voter with a new ballot, record that in the book of the presiding officer, and the voter will be able to vote. To avoid a voter asking for multiple ballots, in terms of the regulations, voters are limited to not more than 2 ballots at a time. So if you make a mistake, we'll issue the first ballot, we issue the second ballot, and thereafter a voter will have to leave with the choice that they would have made on the ballot. You can issue the third ballot to a same vote.
So someone is then asking, does the inclusion of independent candidates also mean that the ballot paper is likely to be longer than we would have seen before?
Even before the participation of independents, with each election, the number of contestants increases. In 1994, we had 26 unique parties that contested the 1994 elections. Fast forward to 2019, we had 78 political parties that had met the requirement to contest elections. When we closed candidate nominations this year, in excess of 100 parties and 7 independent candidates had made submissions. Through the process of validation, we've been able to remove some of those contestants because they have not met the requirements. The ballots for these elections will be slightly bigger than the ballots that we had in the 2019 elections. We can confirm also that for the first time in a national election, there will be a 2-column ballot paper. In other words, parties set one after the other in one column, and parties repeated alongside those parties in a second column. So the national ballot will have contestants or political parties set out in 2 columns on a ballot paper. Thankfully, we have been able to avoid ballot papers that span more than a single page. So we'll have single-page ballot papers, but for the national, there will be a ballot with 2 columns. For the rest of the regions and the provincial legislatures, we will retain the single column ballots, and those ballots will vary in length depending on the number of contestants in each of the regions or provinces.
What happens then if someone comes, they can't read or write? What do they do?
There are two things that we are doing. The first one is what we call a UBT, a universal ballot template. It is a tactile cardboard that mimics the ballot paper. We will insert the ballot paper into that tactile board, and a voter who is able to identify the identifier of their candidate or party may then be advised to make a mark in that only one block. That way, they don't have to reveal the identity of the vote. Similarly, for voters who are visually impaired, if we give them the orientation of the UBT, we assist them to insert the ballot inside the UBT. If they can read Braille, they will be able to vote without disclosing their choice to any person at the voting station. If it becomes unavoidable that a voter may not be able to vote without disclosing their choice, that vote is cast in the presence of the presiding officer as well as party agents that are available at a voting station. In those circumstances, it is unavoidable that the choice of the voter will have to be disclosed so that they can be assisted to vote in the elections.
So do you, as the IEC, and this has been a common question, envision that there could be longer lines or a longer time when it comes to voting? Because others are saying if the ballot paper is likely to be longer, others are thinking how much time then are they going to be spending at the voting station?
We're hoping for a higher voter turnout, and if that combines with longer ballots, then there will be predictably there will be longer queues, longer time taken to vote at voting stations. Because we are anticipating that, we've already put in measures to anticipate those and ameliorate their impact on the voter experience. So we will have measures at the voting station. For example, when a person arrives at the voting station, even before they join a queue, we will be able to confirm to them if they are at the correct voting station. We will be able to confirm if they are at the correct voting station, indicate their sequence number in the voters roll at that station, so that when they get to the voters roll officer, all that they mention is a number and we can assist them to vote with relative ease. We will have ballot orientations at the voting station, as I've indicated, to enable voters to familiarize themselves with the layout of the ballot, to have an idea that their party either appears at the top, towards the middle, or towards the bottom of the ballot, so that voters don't get confronted with the ballot paper for the first time when they enter the voting booth. That will also translate into the time that we need to count, because hitherto we've always voted on 2 ballots for the national and provincial elections. The addition of the 3rd ballot will increase the time that it takes to sort and to count those ballots. We are investing in additional counting capacity to assist the presiding officers with the count, so that we can move the count much more faster, but also make sure that we get accurate results out of voting stations to avoid instances of objections and request for a recount once the results are declared.
All right, thank you very much for that. And I do hope, as the viewers, you got to be able to have a lot of your questions answered. Mr. Sheburi, do appreciate your time. That is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer at the IEC, Masego Sheburi. And I do hope then that some of the questions that you had with regards to the 3-ballot system, you are now at least in the light when it comes to how it's all going to work. But if you're still not, there is still time. We do have this feature every week and looking at election matters, and we'll be taking you through the processes that are likely to unfold now, given the timetable that is unfolding from the IEC's point of view. So tomorrow there's a briefing, but of course there's still a lot to be spoken about as far as the 29th of May is concerned. So this is your time to also be able to partake and ask those important questions to you. It is called Election Matters.